My family once said, "Your sister earns real money. You just playing with books." I nodded and left quietly. 2 years later, her bank rejected Sis's loan. Then the bank manager called Dad. "Sorry, but your other child just—" They say silence speaks louder than words. I never believed it until the day I walked out of my parents' house with nothing but a duffel bag and my laptop, leaving behind a family that had spent years making me feel worthless. My name is Deborah Chen, and this is the story of how I became the family disappointment who turned into their last hope. Growing up in Sacramento, California, I was always the odd one out. My older sister, Brittany, was everything our parents wanted in a daughter. Blonde highlights, perfectly manicured nails, and a sales job at a luxury car dealership that brought home big commission checks. She drove a leased BMW, wore designer clothes, and posted Instagram photos that made our parents' friends jealous. Meanwhile, I spent my evenings in the campus library working toward my PhD in financial engineering. My beat-up Honda Civic embarrassed my mother. My thrift store wardrobe made my father shake his head. The research papers I published in academic journals meant nothing compared to Brittany's latest bonus check. Deborah is still in school at 26. Mom would tell her book club friends, her voice dripping with disappointment. "We don't know when she'll ever get a real job." Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago was the beginning of the end. Brittany had just closed a deal on 3 luxury SUVs to a tech executive, earning herself a $15,000 commission. Dad opened a bottle of expensive wine to celebrate. Mom cooked Brittany's favorite dishes. The whole evening revolved around my sister's success. I had just received feedback that my dissertation on algorithmic trading strategies was nearly complete, with my committee praising the work. It was one of the most significant achievements in my academic career. I mentioned it quietly during dessert. Dad barely looked up from his pumpkin pie. "That's nice, honey." Brittany smirked. "Do they pay you for those paper things?" "It's about contributing to the field," I explained. "This research could change how—" "But do they pay you?" she interrupted louder this time. "Well, no, but—" "Exactly." She leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine. "I made 15 grand this week. How much did your paper make you?" Mom reached over and squeezed Brittany's hand. "We're so proud of you, sweetie." The words I waited to hear, just not for me. I helped clear the dishes in silence while Brittany showed Mom photos of the luxury watches she was planning to buy with her commission. Dad joined them in the living room, laughing at something on Brittany's phone. Christmas was worse. Brittany showed up in a new Mercedes, a demo from the dealership that she got to drive for free. She parked it right in front of the house, making sure all the neighbors could see. I arrived in my Honda with a wrapped present. I'd spent weeks choosing a first edition of Dad's favorite novel that I'd found at an estate sale. It cost me $300, which was a lot on my teaching assistant salary. Brittany gave Dad a Rolex. He cried when he opened it. Actually cried. He hugged Brittany for a full minute, telling her how blessed he was to have such a successful daughter. He thanked me politely for the book and set it on the coffee table. I saw it 3 months later in the same spot, still unread, gathering dust. But the moment everything shattered came in February, right before my dissertation defense. I was stressed beyond belief, preparing for the most important presentation of my academic career. I'd been working with a team of professors on developing a new risk assessment model for hedge funds, and several major financial institutions had expressed interest in the research. I made the mistake of asking my family to attend my defense. It was open to the public, and having family support would mean everything to me. Dad said he had a golf tournament. Mom said she was helping Brittany shop for furniture for her new apartment. Brittany didn't even respond to my text. The defense was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. That morning, I called Mom. "Please," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "This is really important to me." She sighed, the kind of sigh that made me feel like a burden. "Deborah, honey, you know Brittany needs help with her apartment. She's moving up in the world. She's about to make senior sales associate. Besides, we've been to your other school things. How many graduations does one person need?" This isn't a graduation. This is my dissertation defense. It's the culmination of 6 years of work. "Well, I'm sure you'll do fine. You always do fine with your school stuff. But Brittany needs us right now. She's buying real furniture, making real investments in her future." Something inside me broke. Not dramatically, not with tears or yelling. Just a quiet snap, like a rubber band stretched too far. "You know what?" I said calmly. "You're right. I'll be fine." I hung up and turned off my phone. My defense went perfectly. My committee praised my work. My advisor, Dr. Harrison, told me that my research was some of the most innovative he'd seen in 20 years of teaching. 2 hedge funds reached out within a week wanting to discuss my risk models. I turned on my phone that night to 17 texts from Brittany, all variations of, "Why are you being so dramatic?" and "Mom's upset that you hung up on her," nothing asking how my defense went. The final straw came in April. I had just accepted a position as a quantitative analyst at Sterling Macro Advisors, a boutique hedge fund in Manhattan. The starting salary was $240,000, not including bonuses. My signing bonus alone was $50,000. I called to tell my parents, thinking maybe this would finally make them proud. Maybe now that I had a real job with real money, they'd see me differently. Dad answered. I could hear the television in the background. "Hey, Dad, I have some news. I got a job offer in New York." "That's great, honey. Doing what?" "Quantitative analysis for a hedge fund. The salary is—" "Hold on, Brittany's calling on the other line. Let me call you back." He never called back. I texted Mom the details. She responded 3 hours later. "That's wonderful, Deborah. Does New York have good shopping? Brittany loves shopping." Everything was always about Brittany. I tried one more time. I invited them all to dinner to celebrate my new position. I chose a nice restaurant, made reservations, even offered to pay. They showed up 40 minutes late because Brittany had wanted to stop at Nordstrom first. She spent the entire appetizer course on her phone, texting with a client. Mom kept bringing up how Brittany was being considered for a promotion to sales manager. When I mentioned my salary, Dad's eyes widened slightly, but then Brittany laughed. "That's cute, Deborah. But you know those fancy finance jobs burn people out in like 2 years, right? I'm building a sustainable career. I'll probably make sales director by next year, and that's $150,000 base salary plus commission. Plus, I'll actually have work-life balance." Mom nodded enthusiastically. Brittany's thinking long-term. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired. I felt tired, still begging for scraps of approval from people who would never see me. I went back to the table, placed $300 bills down for the meal we'd barely eaten, and stood up. "I'm moving to New York in 2 weeks," I said. "I'd love for you all to be part of my life, but I'm done begging for basic respect." Brittany rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive." "Your sister earns real money," Dad said, his voice taking on that lecturing tone I knew so well. "She has a career people can understand. You're just playing with books and numbers. You should be more like Brittany, instead of acting superior about your fancy degrees." There it was. The truth I'd always known, but they'd never said quite so clearly. "Noted," I said. Mom reached for my hand. "Deborah, don't be like this. We're proud of you too, but you have to understand." I pulled my hand away. "Understand what?" "That I'll never be good enough." "I already understand that perfectly." I left the restaurant and never looked back. The move to New York was liberating. I found a small apartment in Brooklyn, threw myself into my work, and discovered something amazing. When you're surrounded by people who value intelligence and hard work, you start to value yourself. Those first few months in Manhattan were brutal in the best possible way. Sterling Macro Advisors didn't hire me to sit quietly in the corner. They wanted results, and they wanted them fast. My first project involved analyzing exposure risk across 17 different market sectors during unprecedented volatility. I worked 16-hour days, survived on coffee and takeout, and loved every exhausting minute of it. My colleagues were brilliant. There was Marcus, an MIT grad who could code trading algorithms in his sleep, Jennifer, who'd worked at Goldman Sachs for a decade before joining Sterling, and David, whose PhD in applied mathematics made my financial engineering degree look basic. These people challenged me, respected me, and never once made me feel like I was just playing with numbers. The culture shock from my family's dismissiveness to this environment of mutual respect was jarring. During my second week, I presented a preliminary analysis to the senior partners. Halfway through, I made an error in my calculation. I froze, expecting the kind of dismissive ridicule I'd grown accustomed to at family dinners. Instead, Marcus simply said, "Check the third variable in your regression model. I think there's a correlation issue." He was right. I corrected it on the spot, and the presentation continued. Afterward, he bought me coffee, and we spent an hour discussing advanced statistical methods. Nobody made me feel stupid. Nobody rolled their eyes. It was just problem-solving among professionals who respected each other's expertise. That's when I truly grasped how dysfunctional my family dynamics had been. This was normal. This was how people should treat each other. My apartment in Brooklyn was tiny, a fourth-floor walk-up in Prospect Heights. with a kitchen the size of a closet and radiators that clanked all night. But it was mine. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing each piece with intention. No rushed decisions trying to impress anyone, just building a space that felt like home. I made friends with my neighbor, an artist named Keisha, who worked at a gallery in Chelsea. She'd invite me over for wine after my long workdays, and we'd talk about everything except finance. She introduced me to her circle dancers, writers, musicians, people who measured success by passion and creativity rather than dollar signs. They taught me that there were countless ways to build a meaningful life. One evening, Keisha asked about my family. I gave her the abbreviated version, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. She listened quietly, then said, "You know what, I think. I think you've been auditioning for a role in their production of The Perfect Family, but they already cast it, and you weren't the type they wanted. So you can keep auditioning forever, or you can write your own show." Her words stayed with me. The breakthrough at Sterling came in November, about 8 months into my tenure. The market was showing signs of stress, nothing catastrophic, but concerning patterns in the credit default swap market that reminded me of preliminary research I'd done for my dissertation. I built a model predicting significant turbulence in the commercial real estate sector. The senior partners were skeptical. The prevailing wisdom said commercial real estate was solid, but I had the data and I trusted my analysis. I presented my findings in a conference room full of men twice my age with decades more experience. The stress indicators are subtle, I explained, pulling up charts on the projection screen, but they're there. If we don't adjust our exposure now, we could be looking at substantial losses in Q1. The managing partner, Robert Steinberg, studied my projections for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he looked up. "How confident are you in this model?" "Very confident, sir." "Confident enough to stake your reputation on it?" I took a breath. This was the moment. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then let's adjust the portfolio. If you're wrong, we'll have a very interesting conversation. If you're right, you'll have earned your bonus." I was right. By February, the commercial real estate market had contracted exactly as my model predicted. Sterling avoided losses that devastated 3 of our competitors. That single analysis saved the fund approximately $42 million. My first year at Sterling Macro Advisors exceeded expectations. The risk models I developed saved the fund from a major loss during a market downdraft. My bonus that year was $280,000. The work itself was exhilarating in ways I'd never experienced. Each morning I'd walk into the office and feel like I belonged somewhere for the first time in my life. My colleagues were brilliant, driven people who actually understood what I did. When I explained a complex algorithm over lunch, they asked intelligent questions instead of glazing over. When I solved a particularly tricky problem, they celebrated with me. My team leader, Marcus Rodriguez, became an unexpected mentor. He built his career from nothing, working his way up from a state school with no connections, just raw talent and determination. He saw something in me that my family never had. "You've got instincts," he told me, after I caught a flaw in a trading model that could have cost the fund millions. "Most people can run the numbers. You understand what the numbers mean." I started getting invited to present at team meetings, then client meetings. Within 8 months, I was the go-to person for risk assessment on our highest value accounts. The partners noticed. They started pulling me into strategy sessions, asking my opinion on potential investments. My birthday that year fell on a Tuesday. I didn't mention it to anyone at work, and I certainly didn't expect my family to remember they'd forgotten the previous 2 years. But when I arrived at my desk that morning, there was a card signed by my entire team and a bakery box filled with expensive pastries. Marcus had somehow figured out the date and organized the whole thing. I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes. Not sad tears, grateful ones. These people who'd known me less than a year cared more about acknowledging my existence than my family ever had. Mom called that evening 2 hours before midnight. "Oh, honey, is your birthday coming up soon, or was it last month? I can never remember if you're October or November." "It's today, Mom." "Oh, well, happy birthday, sweetheart. Brittany just got back from Napa. She went with some clients. The photos are gorgeous. You should see her Instagram." I didn't tell my family. They called occasionally birthday calls that lasted 5 minutes, obligatory check-ins, where Mom would talk about Brittany for 20 minutes before remembering to ask how I was doing. I kept my answers vague. Work was fine. New York was fine. Everything was fine. Brittany posted constantly on social media about her life, new car lease, expensive dinners, beach vacations in Cabo, designer handbags. She looked successful, and my parents ate it up, commenting on every photo with pride emojis. I kept my Instagram private and rarely posted. My colleagues and I weren't really the social media types. We were too busy actually making money. Year 2 at Sterling brought a promotion to senior quantitative analyst and another substantial raise. My total compensation package hit $450,000. I started investing seriously, building a portfolio that would set me up for early retirement if I wanted it. I also started consulting on the side, helping other hedge funds optimize their trading algorithms. That brought in another $100,000 annually. The consulting gigs came through word of mouth. One satisfied client would recommend me to another. My reputation in the industry was growing faster than I'd ever imagined. At conferences, people knew my name. My research papers were being cited by other academics. I was building something real. Something sustainable, something that couldn't be repossessed or taken away. I bought myself a gift that second year, a custom-tailored suit from a boutique in Soho. It cost $2,000 more than I'd ever spent on a single piece of clothing. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw someone powerful, someone who'd earned every thread. Meanwhile, back in Sacramento, things were changing for Brittany, though I didn't know it yet. The economy was shifting. Interest rates were climbing. Wealthy buyers were pulling back on luxury purchases. The tech executives who used to buy 3 cars at a time were tightening their belts, worried about layoffs and stock market volatility. Brittany's commissions started shrinking first by a little, then by a lot, but her expenses didn't shrink. She'd signed a lease on that expensive apartment, committed to car payments on the Mercedes, gotten used to a lifestyle that required a consistent 6-figure income. The credit cards that had always been there for emergencies became necessities. Designer bags went on credit, vacations went on credit, even groceries went on credit, some months when the commissions ran dry. She kept posting on Instagram like everything was perfect. New outfit photos, brunch at trendy restaurants, the facade of success while the foundation crumbled underneath. I knew none of this. We barely spoke anymore. I'd call Mom on major holidays, keep the conversation brief and surface level, and go back to my life. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in my office reviewing quarterly performance reports when my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken in 4 months. "Hi, Dad." "Deborah," his voice sounded strained. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. "Is someone sick?" No, nothing like that. It's Brittany. She's in some financial trouble." I waited. "She needs a loan. Quite a large one, actually. She's trying to refinance her car and consolidate some debt, but the bank denied her application. Something about her debt-to-income ratio." The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of Brittany bragging about her income, her commissions, her success, and now she couldn't qualify for a loan. "We tried to help." Dad continued, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "We gave her what we could, but our retirement savings aren't what they should be. And we've already borrowed against the house once to help her through a rough patch last year. They borrowed against their house to help Brittany last year, and I'd never heard a word about it, but they knew exactly when to call me." "How much does she need?" $60,000. I nearly dropped my phone. $60,000. The car loan is underwater. She owes more than it's worth, and she has some credit card debt. She got in over her head with the lifestyle. You know how it is. Young people overspend, but she's working on getting back on track. She's been taking extra shifts at the dealership, really putting in the effort. Extra shifts. As if the problem was that Brittany wasn't working hard enough, not that she'd spent years living like a millionaire on an inconsistent income. "And you want me to co-sign for $60,000? Well, yes. Your family, and you have that good job now. You must be doing well. Surely you can afford to help your sister." The audacity was breathtaking. Not once had Dad asked how I was doing. Not once had he asked about my life, my apartment, whether I was happy, just straight to asking for money. "Does Brittany know you're calling me?" He hesitated. "She knows we're exploring all options." "That's not what I asked." "She's embarrassed, Deborah. She doesn't want to ask you for help, but she's desperate. She's looking at repossession. She might lose her apartment. Your mother is worried sick about this." And there it was. Mom was worried about Brittany. Always Brittany. Never about how her other daughter had moved 3,000 miles away and rebuilt her entire life alone. "Let me think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. The bank needs an answer by next week, and Brittany's really stressed about this. You know how she gets." I hung up and stared at my computer screen. Numbers danced in front of my eyes. The algorithms I'd built, the models that had made millions for my fund, the careful financial planning that had built my own wealth. Brittany had mocked my education. Dad had said I was just playing with books. Mom had chosen Brittany's furniture shopping over my dissertation defense, and now they wanted $60,000. I called my friend and colleague Jason Wu, who worked in private wealth management. Hypothetically, I said, if someone asked you to co-sign a $60,000 loan for a family member who's already financially irresponsible, what would you say? I'd say that's how you ruin your credit score and your family relationship simultaneously. That's what I thought. Why is someone hitting you up for money? My sister, the one I told you about. Jason whistled. The one who said you were playing with books. That's the one. And now she wants you to bail her out. $60,000 worth of bailout. What are you going to do? I thought about it for 3 days. I thought about every dismissive comment, every missed milestone, every time I'd been made to feel less than. I thought about my dissertation defense that I presented to a room full of colleagues while my family shopped for throw pillows. Then I made my decision. I called Dad back. I am not co-signing the loan. Silence. Then Deborah, she's your sister. She's the sister who earned real money while I was just playing with books. I'm sure she'll figure it out. Don't be petty. We need you to help. You needed me at my dissertation defense. You needed me at a dozen moments that mattered to me. I was there. Where were you? That's different. This is serious. My entire career was serious. You just didn't think it mattered. I could hear Mom in the background telling Dad to convince me. He tried for another 10 minutes, cycling through guilt, obligation, and finally anger. You're being selfish, he finally said. I'm being practical. Brittany made her choices. I made mine. I hung up. Mom called. I didn't answer. Brittany left a voicemail. Her voice shaking with tears, talking about how disappointed she was in me, how family was supposed to help family. The irony was almost funny. The calls didn't stop. Over the next week, I received 47 text messages, 13 voicemails, and 2 emails from various family members. My Aunt Karen, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, suddenly called to tell me how selfish I was being. Uncle Mike left a rambling message about how I'd changed since moving to New York, how the city had made me cold. Brittany's messages grew increasingly desperate, then angry, then manipulative. I guess money changed you. Remember when we were close? I always supported your dreams, and this is how you repay me. That last one made me laugh out loud. Supported my dreams. She'd mocked them at every opportunity. The worst call came from my grandmother, my dad's mother, who'd always been relatively neutral in family politics. She was 84 and her voice trembled as she asked me to reconsider. Your grandfather and I didn't raise your father to have children who abandoned each other, she said softly. That one hurt, but I held firm. Grandma, I love you, but this isn't about abandonment. Brittany made choices that led her here. I made different choices. I can't sacrifice my financial stability for hers. But you have so much, dear. I have what I earned. There's a difference. She didn't call again. Meanwhile, my career trajectory at Sterling continued its upward climb. The commercial real estate prediction had caught the attention of some major players in the industry. I was invited to speak at a quantitative finance conference in Boston, where I presented a paper on stress testing methodologies. A portfolio manager from Bridgewater Associates approached me afterward trying to recruit me. I wasn't interested in leaving Sterling yet, but it felt good to be wanted to have my expertise valued and pursued. During this time, I also started a side project that would eventually change everything. A former classmate from my PhD program, Kevin Martinez, reached out about consulting for his startup. They were building a platform to democratize algorithmic trading for smaller investors, and they needed someone to develop their risk assessment framework. I agreed to consult for them on weekends, more for the intellectual challenge than the money. But Kevin insisted on paying me properly $5,000 per weekend of work. Over 6 months, that consulting gig brought in an additional $60,000. I was building multiple revenue streams, diversifying my income, doing everything Brittany should have done instead of leasing cars she couldn't afford and buying handbags to impress people she didn't like. The family pressure campaign continued for 3 weeks before finally dying down. The final message came from Dad, and it wasn't a plea, it was an accusation. You've become someone we don't recognize, he wrote in an email. Your mother is crying herself to sleep, worrying about Brittany, and you're living in your ivory tower in New York, too important to help your own family. We raised you better than this. I stared at that email for an hour before responding. You raised me to believe that education was worthless compared to immediate financial returns. You raised me to think my accomplishments meant nothing if they didn't come with flashy cars and designer labels. You raised me to feel inferior for choosing substance over style. You raised me exactly as I am, someone who learned that real success requires sacrifice, discipline, and strategic planning. Brittany didn't learn those lessons. That's not my fault, and it's not my responsibility to fix. I love you all, but I'm done setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. I hit send and blocked all their numbers except Mom's. I needed at least one lifeline in case of actual emergencies, but I was done being guilted. A week later, Brittany tried to apply for a loan at a different bank and then another. Each one denied her. Her credit score had taken a beating from maxed out cards and a few late payments she'd conveniently never mentioned to our parents. She was in real trouble, the kind of trouble that comes from living a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget. I heard about all this through the family grapevine, a cousin who reached out to ask if I knew what was going on. Apparently, Brittany was facing repossession of her Mercedes, and Mom was having panic attacks about what the neighbors would think. Part of me felt bad, a small part, but the larger part remembered being 26 years old, eating ramen in my studio apartment while working on my PhD, listening to Brittany talk about her $1,000 shopping sprees. 3 weeks after the loan denials, my phone rang at 9 in the morning. An unknown New York number. Hello, is this Deborah Chen speaking? Miss Chen, this is Richard Bowman. I am the Vice President of Commercial Lending at Metropolitan Trust Bank. My blood ran cold. Had something happened with my accounts? I'm calling because your father, Robert Chen, listed you as next of kin on some documents he submitted. I wanted to reach out to you directly regarding a rather unusual situation. I'm not co-signing anything for my sister, I said immediately. He laughed, a warm sound. No, nothing like that. Actually, quite the opposite. I'm calling because we've recently restructured our private wealth management division and we're actively recruiting quantitative analysts with your background. Your name came across my desk through our New York office. Apparently, you've done some consulting work with our hedge fund partners. I blinked. Yes, I've done some consulting. Well, I'm calling to offer you a position as Director of Quantitative Risk Management. It would be based here in Manhattan, comprehensive benefits package, and a starting compensation of $650,000 annually. I nearly dropped my phone for the second time that month. I'm very interested, Mr. Bowman, but I'm confused about why you mentioned my father. Yes. Well, your father came into our Sacramento branch yesterday to apply for a personal loan on behalf of your sister. During the credit review, we noticed some unusual flags. Our system runs comprehensive background checks on all family members listed on loan applications over $50,000. It's standard procedure for fraud prevention. He paused. That's when your financial profile came up. Miss Chen. I have to say your portfolio is extraordinary for someone your age. The investment strategy you've employed is remarkably sophisticated. My hands were shaking. Thank you. When I saw that you work in quantitative analysis, I knew I had to reach out. We've been trying to poach top talent from the major hedge funds for months. Would you be interested in discussing this opportunity? Absolutely. Wonderful. Now, I should mention I did have to call your father to verify some information on his loan application. I'm afraid we denied it. His debt-to-income ratio is concerning, particularly given the existing financial obligations he's already supporting. I understand. During that conversation, he mentioned his daughter, meaning your sister, I assume was in some financial difficulty. I may have inadvertently mentioned that his other daughter appears to be doing quite well for herself. I hope that wasn't overstepping. I could picture Dad's face when he got that call, the bank manager calling to tell him his loan was denied, then casually mentioning that his other daughter, the one who was just playing with books, had a portfolio that impressed a bank vice president. That's quite all right, Mr. Bowman. Excellent. Shall we schedule a formal interview? I'm confident we can put together a package that would make leaving Sterling worth your while. We talked for another 30 minutes. By the end of the call, I had an interview scheduled for the following week and a preliminary offer that would put my total compensation at close to $800,000 when bonuses were factored in. I sat in my office after hanging up, staring at the city skyline outside my window. The interview process with Metropolitan Trust Bank was unlike anything I'd experienced. They flew me to their headquarters, put me up in a 5-star hotel, and arranged meetings with their entire executive team. This wasn't just a job interview, it was a courtship. The first meeting was with Richard Bowman, the VP who'd initially called me. He walked me through their vision for the risk management division, the resources they'd provide, and the autonomy I'd have to build the department from scratch. We've been operating with an outdated approach to risk assessment, he explained. pulling up performance charts on his computer. We need someone who understands modern quantitative methods, someone who can integrate machine learning with traditional analysis. Your work at Sterling combined with your academic background makes you uniquely qualified. The second meeting was with their chief investment officer, a sharp woman named Patricia Hang, who'd made her name at BlackRock before joining Metropolitan Trust. I read your dissertation, she said, catching me off guard. The section on tail risk modeling in asymmetric markets was fascinating. Have you considered applying those methods to municipal bond portfolios? We spent 90 minutes diving deep into technical discussions, debating methodologies, and trading ideas. She challenged my assumptions. I defended my positions. And by the end of it, we were both energized by the conversation. This was what intellectual engagement looked like, two professionals respecting each other's expertise. The final interview was with the CEO, Thomas Bradford, a distinguished man in his early 60s, who'd built Metropolitan Trust into a regional powerhouse. Ms. Chen, he said, gesturing for me to sit in his corner office overlooking Manhattan. I'm going to be direct with you. We're not the biggest bank, we're not the flashiest, but we're smart and we're growing, and we need people like you to help us compete with the big players. Richard tells me you're special. Patricia says you're brilliant. I want to know what you want. The question caught me off guard. What I want from your career, from this position if you take it. What does success look like to you? I thought about it carefully. I want to build something that lasts. Not just profitable quarters, but sustainable systems that will still be valuable in 10 years. I want to lead a team that respects intellectual rigor. And honestly, I want to be somewhere that values substance over flash. He smiled. Then I think you'll fit in well here. The offer came 2 days later. $750, $1,000, base salary signing bonus of $100, $1,000 performance bonuses that could push total compensation over $1 million annually, and equity options in the bank. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making at 30 years old. But more than the money, it was the opportunity, a director-level position. Full autonomy. The chance to build something from the ground up. I called my mentor from graduate school, Dr. Harrison, to get his advice. What's holding you back? He asked. Sterling has been good to me. I don't want to seem disloyal. He laughed. Deborah, loyalty is earned, not demanded. Sterling gave you an opportunity, and you delivered exceptional results for them. You don't owe them your career. This new position is a significant step up. Take it. I gave Sterling 2 weeks' notice. Robert Steinberg, the managing partner, tried to counter-offer, but I'd already made my decision. He understood. You're going to do great things, he said, shaking my hand on my last day. And when you're running your own fund someday, give me a call. I'll invest. Then my phone rang again. Dad, I answered. Hi, Dad. Deborah. His voice sounded different, smaller. The bank manager called me. I heard. He said you have an impressive financial portfolio. He did. He said you're being recruited for a director position. That's correct. Silence stretched between us. Why didn't you tell us? He finally asked. Would you have cared? More silence. Your mother wants to talk to you. I'm sure she does. Deborah, please. We're in a difficult situation here. Brittany's about to lose her car. She might have to move back home. Your mother is beside herself. And you want me to do what exactly? We need help. Family helps family. Family shows up for each other, I said quietly. Family celebrates each other's achievements. Family doesn't mock each other's careers or belittle their accomplishments. Family doesn't miss the most important day of someone's life to go furniture shopping. Deborah, I'm not giving Brittany money. I'm not co-signing loans. I'm not bailing anyone out. You all made it very clear where I stood in this family. I was just playing with books, remember? We didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. And you know what? You were right. I was playing with books, with numbers, with models and algorithms. And those books and numbers are worth more than Brittany's commission checks ever were. That's cruel. No, Dad. Cruel is telling your daughter her PhD defense isn't worth attending. Cruel is making someone feel worthless for pursuing education. Cruel is calling only when you need money. So you're just going to abandon your family. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just done begging for respect I'll never get. You want to talk? Call me. Want to visit? I'm in New York. Want a relationship, act like you care about my life, not just my bank account. Your sister needs you. My sister needs to learn the same lessons I did. That real success isn't about looking rich on Instagram. It's about building something sustainable. She mocked my education while maxing out credit cards. She's about to learn a very expensive lesson. I took a breath. And for the record, the bank manager called me because they're impressed with my work. They want to recruit me. That call your loan denial triggered might end up being worth another $200,000 a year to me. So thank you, I guess, for that. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. If you change your mind, he started. I won't. I hung up. Brittany called next. Then Mom. Then Brittany again, this time crying. Then a long rambling text from Mom about family obligations and forgiveness, and how I was being heartless. I turned off my phone and went for a walk through Brooklyn, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and pink. The interview with Metropolitan Trust Bank went exceptionally well. They offered me the position at $750 and $1,000 annual compensation plus a significant signing bonus. I accepted. My resignation from Sterling was bittersweet. They counter-offered trying to keep me, but the new opportunity was too good to pass up. Plus, there was something satisfying about taking a position that had come to me indirectly through my family's loan denial. I moved to a better apartment in Manhattan. I hired a financial advisor to help manage my growing wealth. I threw myself into my new role and discovered I loved the challenge of building a department from the ground up. 6 months passed. I heard through my cousin that Brittany had lost the Mercedes and moved back in with Mom and Dad. She was selling used cars, now making a fraction of her previous income. The Instagram posts of designer bags and luxury vacations had stopped. Part of me felt guilty. Most of me didn't. Then came the message that surprised me. Brittany sent an email. Not a text, an actual email, with no subject line. Deborah, I know I don't deserve a response. I know I was awful to you. All of us were. I'm writing because I've had a lot of time to think lately, and I owe you an apology. A real one, not one where I'm asking for money or expecting anything back. You were right about everything. I built my entire life on commissions and leases and credit cards, and I thought that was success. I mocked your education because I was jealous. I was scared that you were smarter than me, working harder than me, and that eventually everyone would see it. They did. I'm living with Mom and Dad again. I'm driving a 15-year-old Toyota. I'm working at a used car lot and barely making enough to pay down my credit card debt. It's humiliating, but it's also honest. For the first time in years, I'm living within my means. I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, what we all did, and I'm sorry. I'm proud of you, Deborah. I should have said that years ago. You earned everything you have, and you did it while we made you feel worthless. That takes strength I don't have. I hope you're happy in New York. I hope you're surrounded by people who see your worth. You deserve that. Love, Brittany. I read the email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and walked to my window, looking out at the city that had given me everything my family never could: respect, recognition, and the freedom to be exactly who I was. After an hour, I wrote back, Brittany, thank you for the apology. It means more than you might think. I'm not ready to jump back into a close relationship, and I don't know if I ever will be, but I appreciate you acknowledging what happened. That takes courage. I am happy. New York has been good to me. I found my place here. I hope you find yours too. Real success isn't about designer bags or Instagram posts. You're learning that the hard way, but at least you're learning. That's something. Take care of yourself. Deborah. 2 weeks later, Mom called. I answered cautiously. Deborah, I owe you an apology. I waited. I failed you as a mother. I let Brittany's flashy success blind me to your real accomplishments. I missed the most important moments of your life because I didn't understand that what you were doing mattered. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. I am so sorry, baby. You deserve better from us. Something in my chest loosened just a little. Thank you for saying that. Can we try again? Can I visit you in New York? I'd like to see your life, really see it, not just ask about it in passing. I thought about it, about years of hurt and disappointment, about the quiet snap of giving up on their approval, about building a life they never bothered to witness. Maybe I said, let's start with phone calls. Real ones where we talk about my life and yours, where I'm not just an ATM or an afterthought. Can you do that? Yes, I can do that. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something, a tiny seed of possibility. Dad hasn't apologized. I don't expect him to. Some people would rather be right than be close to their children. That's his loss, not mine. I'm 30 years old now. I'm managing a department of 15 analysts. My compensation package hit $900,000 last year. I own my apartment in Manhattan outright. My investment portfolio is worth over $2 million. But the numbers aren't what make me happy. What makes me happy is the respect I've earned, the challenges I solve, the team I'm building. What makes me happy is looking in the mirror and seeing someone who knows her worth, whether her family ever recognized it or not. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. Inside was the first edition book I'd given Dad for Christmas years ago, the one that sat gathering dust on his coffee table. With it was a note in his handwriting. I finally read this. It was beautiful. I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I'm proud of you, Deborah. I should have said it years ago. Love, Dad. I put the book on my shelf and the note in my desk drawer. I don't know if I'll respond. Maybe someday. For now, I'm enough. My success is enough. My life built on books and numbers and hard work is enough, and I don't need their approval to know it. They say silence speaks louder than words. Walking away from people who never valued you isn't cold. It's not cruel. It's not petty. It's just choosing yourself after years of being everyone's last choice. And sometimes that's the most powerful revenge of all. Final thoughts. 3 months later, Metropolitan Trust Bank promoted me to Senior Director of Risk Management. My new salary is $1.2 million annually. I called Mom to tell her. We've been doing weekly phone calls, slowly rebuilding something that might eventually look like a relationship. That's wonderful, honey, she said. And for the first time in my life, she sounded like she meant it. Tell me about the new role. What will you be doing? And I did. For 45 minutes, I talked about risk models and market analysis and team building, and she listened. Really listened. It's not perfect. It may never be perfect. But it's progress. Brittany sent me a text. Congrats on the promotion. You're killing it. 3 words. But from her, they meant everything. Dad still hasn't called. Maybe he never will. I've made peace with that. Last week, a reporter from Forbes reached out. They're doing a feature on young women in finance, and my name came up through industry contacts. The article runs next month. I thought about sending it to my family. Then I thought about the years I spent desperate for their recognition, begging for scraps of pride. I decided not to, because here's what I've learned. The people who matter already know your worth. The ones who don't aren't worth convincing. My sister once earned real money while I was just playing with books. She said it. Dad echoed it. Mom believed it. They were wrong. I wasn't playing. I was building. Slowly, carefully, sustainably. Building a career that would outlast commission checks and Instagram likes. Building wealth that came from skill, not luck. Building a life where my value wasn't determined by other people's limited vision. The bank manager's call to Dad wasn't revenge. My success isn't revenge. Revenge is about making someone pay. This is different. This is justice. This is a woman who was told she wasn't enough, who nodded quietly and left, who built an empire out of books and numbers and refused to let anyone's doubt become her reality. Sometimes the best response to people who underestimate you isn't a dramatic confrontation or a clever comeback. Sometimes it's just becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and then living your life so fully, so successfully, so completely on your own terms that their approval becomes irrelevant. That's not revenge, that's freedom. And it's worth more than any loan I could have co-signed, any relationship I could have forced, any validation I could have begged for. I'm Deborah Chen. I play with books and numbers. And I built a life worth living from every page and every equation. That's my story. That's my truth. And I'm damn proud of it.